Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating story that basically acts as a masterclass in foundational financial literacy. Actually, I want you to picture in your mind the perfect cover image for a storybook. Let's slap the title of our tale right across that cover, The Challenge of Turning 5 Souls into 20. Think of this as our own little once-upon-a-time moment. Our main characters are a young boy named Mateo and his sister Valentina. Picture this. It's a beautiful, sunny Saturday morning. They're strolling down their neighborhood street, looking wistfully into all the shop windows. And man, they have big dreams. They're eyeing a brand new soccer ball and, interestingly enough, some video equipment to start their very own channel. So the ambition is definitely there. The drive is there. But there's one massive, glaring roadblock standing right in their way.
So what's the big problem? Well, it's the number 5. That's it, 5 souls. They look down at their hands and all the funding they have for these big Saturday dreams is exactly 5 souls. Honestly, if you've ever had a massive idea but absolutely zero budget, you know exactly how Mateo and Valentina are feeling right now. 5 souls feels like practically nothing when you're staring down the price tag of brand new video equipment and sports gear.
Looking at those few coins, Mateo just deflates. He literally says, "With this, we can barely afford anything." Valentina lets out a huge sigh and mutters that maybe they should just toss it in a piggy bank and forget about it. And you know, this is absolutely crucial. It perfectly captures that heavy feeling of defeat before the journey even gets started. When your resources are that incredibly small, our default human reaction is usually to either complain that it's completely useless or just hide it away and do nothing at all. They are so ready to just give up on their Saturday plans right then and there.
But right at that absolute lowest point of defeat, they hear this familiar voice asking why they have such long faces. Enter the wise mentor of our story, Don Lucho. He owns the local neighborhood store, and he's just this highly respected figure. Picture a guy always wearing a brown cap, vintage glasses, and this tranquil, knowing smile. He's famous around the block for his deep wisdom when it comes to business, saving money, and just plain hard work. So when Mateo starts venting to him about how they wanted to do something big but it's totally impossible with only 5 souls, Don Lucho just smiles and crosses his arms.
Don Lucho's response to all their frustration is just gold. He says, small money can grow if you use your head before your pocket. Let's just let that sink in for a second, right? This is the core foundational lesson of our entire explainer today. Don Lucho is completely flipping their perspective upside down. He's showing them that the problem isn't the size of their wallet, but problem is how they're thinking about the money. This one simple sentence acts as the spark for the kids. It shifts them completely out of a scarcity mindset and right into a mindset of opportunity.
To really prove his point, Don Lucho throws down a seemingly impossible challenge. He looks at them straight in the eye and says he wants them to take those 5 souls and turn them into 20 before the sun goes down. That is a 400% return on investment in a single afternoon. No way, right? Both Valentina and Mateo instantly shout that it's impossible. But Don Lucho just raises a finger and drops another piece of wisdom. He tells them that most people give up before they even try. The real secret to finances? It's not about having a mountain of money to start with. It's about learning how to multiply your opportunities. Mateo takes a really deep breath and, you guessed it, he accepts the challenge.
Before they can sprint off, Don Lucho hands them a tiny little notebook. And this brings us to rule number 1. Track your money. You got to write down every single expense and every single profit. Don Lucho tells them that a good entrepreneur always controls their money. I love this detail in the story because it introduces the absolute first mechanical step of running a successful business. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants and rely on gut feelings. You need the raw data. So armed with 5 souls and their brand new ledger, the kids set off.
Okay, so to figure this out, they spend a good 30 minutes just brainstorming. It's a classic trial and error phase. First up, they think, hey, let's buy candy in bulk and resell it. But when they actually run the numbers, they realize the profit margins are way too tiny. They'd literally never hit 20 souls by sunset. Next idea, flipping used toys. Great concept, but they quickly realize that requires way more starting capital than the 5 souls they've got in their pockets. The math simply doesn't work out. Valentina starts getting super discouraged, telling Mateo she thinks they're going to lose the challenge.
But then, boom, the aha moment hits. Mateo stops walking and really observes his environment. He notices this massive, long line of people crowded outside the local park. He points out to his sister that today is the day of the huge local soccer tournament. And Valentina, catching on instantly with her eyes totally lighting up, realizes something else incredibly critical. It is a scorcher out there. It is a very, very hot day. This is a brilliant illustration of how the best businesses are born, guys. They found an underserved, desperate market, a massive crowd of incredibly thirsty people stuck in the blazing heat.
They immediately sprint over to a small wholesale store to check out the prices. This is where their seed capital officially goes to work. With their precious 5 souls, they execute their purchasing strategy absolutely perfectly. They grab a stack of disposable cups, a giant bag of instant juice mix, and a bag of ice. Notice how they went to a wholesale store, not just the regular corner convenience store? They are maximizing the purchasing power of every single coin. They borrow a huge plastic pitcher from a friendly neighbor, mix up the juice, and set up shop right next to the sweltering, crowded soccer tournament.
All right, time for marketing. Valentina starts yelling her pitch out to the crowd. Ice-cold juice for just 1 soul. Mateo jumps right in too, shouting, "Perfect for the heat!" Now at first, things are pretty tense. Nobody is buying anything. Mateo starts sweating, second-guessing everything, wondering if maybe Don Lucho put a little too much faith in them. But then, one kid walks up and buys a cup. Then another person. Then a woman comes over and asks for 2 more. Before they even know it, less than an hour has gone by, and there is a huge line of people just waiting for their product.
And that brings us right to their first major milestone. Valentina excitedly announces that they've completely run out of ice. Mateo quickly flips open the notebook, counts up the coins, and realizes they have 12 souls. Think about that. They started with 5, and they've already more than doubled their money. They literally jump for joy. It's that thrilling rush of seeing the immediate success of your own hard work and strategic thinking.
But then, Valentina hits the brakes and asks a really vital question. What do we do now? This is a massive bottleneck in any growing business. Think about it. They have serious momentum, they have sky-high demand, but they have 0 supplies left. If they pack up and go home right now, they only have 12 souls. They officially failed Don Lucho's challenge to reach 20. So how should they handle this? It is a huge decision point for them.
Well, here's where Mateo's memory saves the day. He recalls another crucial piece of Don Lucho's sage advice. When you're in money, don't spend it all. Reinvest it. Now, it takes a whole lot of discipline for a kid to not just walk away with 12 shiny souls and buy a mountain of candy, right? But they stay locked in on the long-term goal. They realize they have to feed that money right back into the machine to keep the whole operation running.
So they hustle back to the store, using part of their 12 souls to buy even more juice mix and ice. But look at how their strategy evolves here. This is awesome. In Phase 1, they were selling 1 glass for 1 sol. Basic retail. But in Phase 2, they get creative. They drop a big sign offering a promotion. 2 glasses for 1.50 sols. This bulk pricing strategy is honestly brilliant. It incentivizes the thirsty crowd to buy a larger volume, which moves their product way faster before the tournament wraps up. Even the neighbors start pointing and whispering about how smart these kids are and what great salespeople they've become.
The hours roll by, the sun starts to dip below the horizon, and the soccer tournament finally wraps up. Mateo and Valentina sit down on a nearby bench, just completely exhausted. Mateo opens up Don Lucho's little notebook one last time to tally up the coins. Let's trace this out with him. He counts 5, 10, 15, 18, 19, 20 sole. 20 souls. Valentina lets out this huge scream of pure joy. They actually did it. They conquered the impossible challenge. They took a tiny, practically useless amount of money, applied intense observation, hard work, and smart reinvestment, and totally smashed their target. They immediately pack up all their stuff and sprint straight back to Don Lucho's neighborhood store, basically bursting through the doors to announce their victory. Don Lucho just gives them this massive, proud smile, telling them he knew they had it in them the whole time.
As Mateo places the filled-out notebook on the counter, he shares this incredibly mature realization. He looks up at Don Lucho and says, "You know, the hardest part wasn't selling. It was not giving up." And wow, that perfectly captures the true essence of entrepreneurship right there. Don Lucho nods slowly. He validates that this is, without a doubt, the most important lesson of the entire day. Anyone can make a simple transaction, sure, but pushing through those early brainstorming failures, fighting off the fear when absolutely no one was buying their juice at first, that's the real victory.
Which brings us nicely to the core moral of this whole explainer. Don Lucho explains to them that money actually grows when you pair it with creativity, effort, and serious patience.
Valentina even admits that just a few hours earlier, they thought 5 sols was completely useless. Don Lucho leaves them with a super powerful thought. Never, ever underestimate a small amount of money. Literally every massive global corporation you see operating today started with something small. The secret sauce is just learning how to properly utilize what you currently hold in your hands. Mateo is so incredibly fired up by this that he actually asks if they can do another challenge next week, which just makes Don Lucho burst out laughing.
Before they head home, Don Lucho writes something down on a piece of paper and hands it over to the kids. And you know what? I am passing that note directly through the screen to you right now. It is a literal 5-step challenge for everyone watching this explainer. Step 1, get 5 sols, or whatever the equivalent small coin is wherever you live. Step 2, sit down together and think of an idea to multiply that money. Step 3, track every single expense and profit in a notebook. Step 4, try your hardest to reach 20 sols using creativity and teamwork. And finally, step 5, share what you learned about its savings and business with someone else. Mateo and Valentina accepted the challenge and it completely changed how they view money forever. So the final question I have for you today is the exact same one Valentina yelled out to the neighborhood. Do you accept the challenge? Think about it, get out there, and start multiplying your opportunities. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the next one.